Welcome to another edition of The Voice of Palestine. It's March 8, 2013, and I'm your co-host, Hanna Qawas. This week we'll be talking with Palestinian diplomat and author Afif Safieh, who's officially the ambassador for the Palestinian Diplomatic Corps. We will discuss with Afif his new book, The Peace Process from Breakthrough to Breakdown, as well as the current situation in Palestine and other issues that may arise. Good evening to you, Afif, and welcome to the Voice of Palestine.
Hanna, it's a pleasure to be with you in this exchange. You remember, you and I met in 1983, last century, in Vancouver, when I had been mandated to attend the World Council of Churches conference in Vancouver. And I have a wonderful memory of how a remarkable person you are and how a man of principle you are. So it's a privilege to be with you on this program.
Thank you a lot. I remember you fondly also. You did a great job with Eugene Makhlouf, I believe.
Yes, sir.
With you as a representative of the PLO at the,
World Council of Churches.
Yeah. And, we came, it was really sad times then. And, we were just out of Lebanon as a Palestinian movement. And also the Sabra and Shatila massacre just happened. And, I just like to remind our listeners and everybody that it happened also because of broken promises by the U.S. administration. You recall Habib, who promised that Israel won't enter Beirut, nor the camps will be, and that the camps, the Palestinian refugee camps, will be safe. That was part of the agreement to leave Beirut, wasn't it, Afif?
Yes, of course. You mentioned a sentence which is extremely important. You said, then was a sad time. Unfortunately, Hanna, for our people, I always say the Nakba is not a frozen moment that has happened sometime in 1948. Unfortunately, it is still an ongoing process until today. And I believe that successive Israeli governments, their policy has been constant. They want as much of Palestinian geography as possible with as little of Palestinian demography as possible. Mm-hmm. And to tell you frankly, I can't remember a year when it was happy to be a Palestinian. I believe we live in distress since 48 onwards. Today we are all worried, you and I, about the Palestinian community in Syria, many of whom have taken refuge in Lebanon, being diasporized again, probably for the third and fourth time in their lifetime. Our people in Gaza, as you know, were subjected to a war very unbalanced and unilateral by the Israelis in November, and offered a lot of fatalities and a lot of casualties. Jerusalem, as you know, is a city that is strangulated and besieged. The Israelis are Israelizing the city with great acceleration, dispossessing people of their land, demolishing houses, and all our urban centers in the West Bank have been caged in by the wall I call the wall of shame, the wall of separation, strangulating, suffocating our life. Our freedom of movement is hampered. I once made a study, Hanna, that our people lose 8 million working hours a day at checkpoints. In the West Bank, teeny meeny West Bank, you have 600 of those unnecessary, harassing checkpoints. You said that was then a sad moment. Yeah. You reminded me of a saying, a Swiss saying during the Napoleonic Wars. Switzerland had a proverb which said, "Les peuples heureux n'ont pas d'histoire." Happy peoples have no history. And we Palestinian people, we are either blessed or plagued by too much history, and we have suffered because of too much mythology and some questionable theology, and we have little geography. Yeah. So, we go from one sad moment to another.
Yeah, so, you mentioned some aspects of the Zionist movement. My question before going into your book, is peace possible with Zionism as a racist ideology and supremacist ideology, not just racist?
I am tempted to answer you yes, but with great difficulty, in the sense that, one, it would be difficult to cohabitate with an entity that has chosen to be your enemy and has chosen to have a racist ideology. Number two, they are now the dominant power in the Middle East, and they even manipulate American foreign policy, and they are reluctant to achieve peace. I always say to my interlocutors that whether one likes it or not, the Arab world as a whole in 2002, in the Arab League summit meeting which was convened in Beirut in 2002, the Arab world adopted the Saudi initiative of the Arab peace plan that revolves around, if Israel withdraws out of the 67 boundaries, the Arab world is ready to recognize it in its pre-67 frontiers. And today I tell my interlocutors in the diplomatic arena that if we have today a diplomatic impasse, it is not due to an Arab rejection of Israeli existence. The diplomatic impasse today is due to an Israeli rejection of Arab acceptance, because they don't want to comply with the territorial prerequisite, meaning withdrawal. Yeah. You will surely want to approach the issue of the peace process from Oslo and beyond. I tell my interlocutors that, unfortunately, the 20 years of theoretical peacemaking did not result in really Israeli withdrawal out of occupation, but it resulted in the expansion of occupation through the elastic illegal growth of those illegal settlements. Yeah. So it's a tough issue. Yeah. Yet I believe, in case we succeed in having the right constellation of factors, peace is achievable, in the sense that if we succeed in mobilizing the international community, in telling and signaling to both sides, and here I mean mainly to the Israeli side, what the world expects from them, I believe peace is doable even with a reluctant and still racist Israel. Yeah. Yet, let me tell you, the American player, who is a decisive player, so far has been paralyzed by the pro-Israeli lobby. You know, Hannah, there is a joke which is not funny, which says, why do you think Israel doesn't want to be a 51st state in the United States of America? And the answer is that then they will have to satisfy themselves with only 2 senators. Today they believe they can take for granted 90 and beyond. And you've seen the ordeal that the nominee Chuck Hagel had to pass through for his confirmation. Chuck Hagel is a very distinguished American senator who had a distinguished career, a self-respecting individual who happened to have said at one moment, I am an American senator and not an Israeli senator, and I am here to defend American national interest and nobody else's national interest. And he spoke of the pro-Israeli lobby as a lobby that happens to intimidate congressmen and senators. You have seen the uproar of the lobby twisting his arm and the arm of Obama and the White House so as to allow them to get the confirmation that they were hoping for. The power of that lobby has been tremendous. They have hijacked American foreign policy. American foreign policy in the Middle East, unfortunately, often looks like a subcontract in the Israeli strategy. Yet I believe many influentials within the administration would like to follow a different course of action, including President Obama, who made beautiful speeches in Istanbul and in Cairo at the beginning of his first mandate, promising to turn a page and open a new chapter, and we were receptive to that message. Yet, unfortunately, Obama had to cave in. He had 5 political battles, confrontations of will with Netanyahu, lost them all. And if you read Haaretz, which I'm sure you do, apparently Netanyahu, when he lands in Washington, he tells his entourage, I'm stronger than that man in the White House, and he ends up proving it each time.
Yeah, it's arrogance, but also I don't think we shouldn't blame the American administration because because they are really participant in these decisions, and we can't really give them carte blanche for not.
Who is giving them carte blanche?
No. I mean, we shouldn't. I mean, I'm not saying you do, but I'm saying we shouldn't, because their history is, as I mentioned, since the Sabra and Shatila on, they've been of broken promises, including the Oslo process, which they signed, and they broke that. And I just maybe I disagree with you that there could be peace with Zionism. I don't think, really personally, I don't think without Israel acknowledging, or the people who are living in Israel acknowledging the original sin in 48, there can't really be peace. And there also, I believe, there can't be peace while there is supremacist ideology. I mean, how you can sit on equal footing with someone who tells you you are not as intelligent as I am, or you are not as superior as I am.
It's up to us to mobilize the world in favor of Palestinian rights and regional peace. And I believe the world today is ready for that step forward. America has been the reluctant player in that game. I know, for example, living in Europe, how much irritation, exasperation, and annoyance there is in Europe vis-à-vis the Israeli practices and the Israeli misbehaviors. But more importantly also, I know, since I have been following and monitoring it, I know the moral crisis there is today among European Jewish communities and even the American Jewish community. There is a tremendous moral crisis. Those Jewish communities grew accustomed for decades, if not for centuries, to be at the forefront of human rights and civil rights. But because of Israeli practices and the occupation and its brutality, inhumanity, I believe they feel that they have been reduced for 60 years to defend the indefensible. And today many are feeling extremely uncomfortable and see Israel as an embarrassment.
Yeah.
I think this offers us a window of opportunity. We should assemble our assets, and we have many assets. For example, I believe we are winning the battle for public opinion, Hanna.
For sure, yeah.
For example, your effort of having a radio program which is respected and listened to is one of those many initiatives around the world that are helping us to raise knowledge, to raise awareness, to mobilize those who are sympathetic to our aspirations and supportive because of our suffering. So we are winning the battle of public opinion, and one day, inevitably, governmental policy will follow public opinion expectations.
Yeah, and I think also, Afif, I think our ineptness as Palestinian, as Arabs, I mean, the Arabs has countless resources, and if they really would like to impose their will, they could, but they can't, because it's been hijacked by the U.S. administration, because you mentioned the Arab initiative in 2002. I mean, any self-respecting leader won't tolerate such a response from the Israelis nor from the American. So,
I fully agree with you that unfortunately we are not blessed with the leaderships we have had to live with. But let me tell you, I believe we Palestinian society should now enter into a period of soul-searching. Let's expect that the performance of our political leadership will be improved. But I believe we should also continue in the soul-searching exercise and admit that there was a failure of the intelligentsia, there was a failure of the business community in Palestine and abroad within the diaspora. And let me tell you very frankly too, Hanna, I also believe there is a failure of our diasporas around the world. The fact, for example, that Canadian foreign policy is so hostile to our minimalistic aspiration is a baffling phenomenon, and is a sign and a signal and a symptom of the failure of the Palestinian Canadian community, the Arab Canadian community, the Muslim Canadian community, which today has the critical mass to organize itself and have its voice heard and participate and contribute to the national debate of what kind of Canada we want and what kind of foreign policy for Canada we want. And let me tell you, the fact that we, the Palestinians, are demographically dispersed in the four corners of the world, and you run into Palestinians from Scandinavia to Pennsylvania to California to Australia, this is the symptom of our tragedy and of our ordeal. Our society was imploded and dispossessed and dispersed, and that's the symptom of our ordeal. But if we are smart, Hannah, we can turn this demographic dispersion into a source of political empowerment.
Yeah.
We are learning how to do it. But up to now, we have not been as successful as expected. And let me give you some success stories. In Belize, the mini-state, the micro-state Belize, some 10 years ago, the Prime Minister of Belize was a Palestinian from El Bire originally, Musa. His foreign minister was a Palestinian originally from Beit Hanina, Shuman. And these were two success stories in a micro-state like Belize. In Salvador, some 8 years ago, the presidential elections, the candidate of the left was a Palestinian from Bethlehem, from the Hamdal family. The candidate of the right was also happened to be from Bethlehem originally, from the Sa'a family. And I remember then Hannah making myself a statement saying, whoever loses in this presidential election, it will be a Palestinian Salvadorian who will occupy the local White House. And it was the Saqa candidate who had succeeded. In Chile, for example, I'm happy to tell you that we have many ministers in the cabinet who are of Palestinian origin. We have apparently dozens of members of parliament of Palestinian origin, and Palestinians in Chile are apparently successful now in academia, in the financial sector, in banking and insurance, in intensive agriculture, and in industry, etc. We need now a philosophy to assemble all those energies, to have it focused towards a goal and a target. And we need to contribute in our countries of adoption in a better manner. Let me tell you, for example, I'm here for the last few days, and I'm here for another few days on a lecturing tour organized by our friends, the Friends of Sabil, which is a Christian movement that supports Palestinian society. I've been telling my interlocutors, Canada, like the USA, is an interesting society because it's a nation of nations. It's the world en miniature. Every possible continent, culture, and civilization is represented within Canada, just like it is in the USA. And I tell my interlocutors that today we have terminated the era of the bipolar system with superpower rivalry, where we in the third world were afraid of possible superpower collusion or collision. Today we don't have that type of world in which I personally grew up. It's a totally different international system. And I believe, sir, because Canada is a nation of nations, a non-alignment, in my opinion, should be what characterizes Canadian foreign policy. Because when Canada, in an ill-inspired manner, takes sides in a regional conflict and aligns itself on one belligerent player, not only does it antagonize all the other players in the region, like it's happening today, but it also antagonizes, offends, and even ghettoizes a domestic component of the social national fabric in Canada and of Canada. It wasn't easy probably in America, for example, to be a Palestinian American, an Arab American, or a Muslim American because of this uncomfortable feeling that your country of adoption is insensitive to the suffering of your country of origin. This also applies in Canada, I believe. And hence, it is an incentive for our diaspora communities to organize themselves better, to refine their message, improve the instruments of expression and the tools of political expression, so that they can contribute in the making and the shaping of Canadian foreign policy.
Actually, I'm not really surprised about Canadian position because they're part of the international imperial system that try to control the resources, and and anybody that opposes them, they try to suppress. The same, I don't think Sakka is a Palestinian to me. Who oppresses other people is not free, and I'm not proud that he was a Palestinian. I'm proud of Handal, mind you.
I was being descriptive, my friend.
Okay.
I did not issue my value judgment on the
other Palestinians.
I was just being clinically descriptive, sir.
Okay, but that leads us to the Oslo process. We interviewed. I'm sure you are familiar with Israel Shahak.
Yes, but that must have been some 15 years ago and beyond, because unfortunately we lost him.
Actually, we interviewed him just a couple of months after the Oslo process.
So it was 93,
November 16, to be exact, 1993.
Yes, sir.
And we interviewed him, and we weren't talking really about the Oslo process. We were talking about Israel arms trade to the third world in general.
Yes.
So that was the subject, that was the topic. But I asked him about what does he think of the peace process and the Oslo in specific, and he correctly noted that Israel intended to reduce the PLO to what he called the Village League, and I'm sure you're aware of the Village League also, a fact painfully obvious today to all but to the Palestinian Authority and the people who supported the Oslo process. Also, he acknowledged, that he predicted the downfall of Yitzhak Rabin and his labor government. I'm just putting this as an intro.
Now, let me tell you, I have known Israel Shahak in the 70s and in the 80s and the early 90s, and he was a decent, remarkable, politically courageous, morally impeccable, etc. So I have great respect for the individual. That does not mean that I always would endorse every position he would have adopted. Mm-hmm. Let me tell you concerning Oslo, Hannah, and I will be glasnostically transparent with you, because I owe you to be frank and sincere, just as you are being with me, sincere and frank. Faisal Husseini, a Palestinian politician from Jerusalem, who also died, by the way, some 10 years ago.
Or murdered in Kuwait. One or the other.
He died.
They gave him a heart attack, most probably.
It's the situation that causes many heart attack and many but we lost Faisal Husseini some 10 years ago. Faisal was a remarkable individual, very authentic. He had what I call sophisticated simplicity. And Faisal, in a jalse, in a gathering in which I was part of, we were discussing Oslo, and a few of our friends were voicing some criticism. Mm-hmm. And Faisal, with great melancholy, took the floor and said the following. Mm-hmm. He said, my friends, yes, it might be smaller, the entity that will be emerging will be much smaller than what we are entitled to. Mm-hmm. It will be crippled by a lot of constraints and almost mutilated. Yet let me tell you, today we are in the tormenting situation of parents who are on the verge of getting a deformed child, but it remains their child. And I advise you all, he was saying in that gathering, that we have to deal with it and handle it with great care and great affection, because it's the only child we have and it's our child. I thought that this was a very profound attitude of great responsibility. Yes, of course, Oslo reflected a certain balance of power in the early 90s. It did not produce the results we were expecting. Yes, you say some have predicted the downfall or the assassination of Rabin and the defeat of labor. And let me tell you, I, for one, I am not an admirer of the Israeli Labor Party. In my discussion with Israelis, I tell them, it's labor that made Palestine unlivable to us Palestinians. What Likud usually does is making Israel unlivable to many Jews. I cannot forget that the ethnic cleansing of 1948, the war of 56, the last of those colonial wars, 1956 Suez, the initiative for the 67 war, the annexation, illegal annexation of East Jerusalem, the beginning of settlement building, and the idea for the wall of shame, the wall of separation, were all labor, by the way. So I'm not enamored or an admirer of labor.
And not to forget Rabin's order to break the bones of the...
To break bones, I didn't want to mention that en passant. Yet Rabin, on pragmatic grounds, and this we have to also to acknowledge, at one moment considered that there was no possibility of a military victory for Israel, and that Palestinians will not allow it to be obliterated out of history. And he was also looking for a certain accommodation compromise, and that was what allowed the opening, the diplomatic opening for the Oslo process. So people change, people mature. I don't agree in watching and looking at realities in a static manner. One has to see things in their dynamism. And let me tell you, I often say to my interlocutors, on a variety of issues, history is still undecided. It's up to us, Hannah, to help history make the right choice.
That's right.
Through our vision, our inspiring ideas, and our devotion, dedication, and struggle and determination. So history often is undecided, and we have to help history make the right choice. For example, we often tell the world, the dilemma in the Middle East, there is either one people too many, or there is a state which is missing. The international community considers that there is a state which is missing. But Israel, sometimes with American support, is obstructing the birth of a Palestinian state. So history is undecided, and it's up to us to help history make the right choice.
Yeah, but I don't know, I want to go back to peace with Zionism. There was the son of the general.
Yes, Miko Peled.
He was on a tour, and in Vancouver, basically he clearly stated that you can't have really peace with Zionism, and the only solution is the one state where one person...
Hannah, my problem is the following. I have great respect for the father of Miko Peled, whom I knew from the 70s, and I had the pleasure of meeting Miko Peled once only in California. The problem we have with Miko Peled is that he has not convinced one single Israeli, yet he seems to have convinced many a Palestinian. I would look at him with more importance if he were more successful in converting more Jewish Israelis than converting Palestinians. Let me tell you, Yuri Avneri, another interesting Israeli, once said that those who today speak of the one-state solution remind him of a person who was beaten by a lightweight boxer and who say, next time send me a heavyweight boxer and you will see what I'll do with him. Let me tell you, today, unlike in the second half of the 60s, those who speak of a one-state solution, they do it out of pessimism on the possibility of a two-state solution. And having failed in creating a Palestinian state on 22% of what was legitimately ours, they say, let's go back to 100%.
No, I think
I believe that it's not a serious discussion, and it's very unrealistic.
First of all, we have to be principled and honest with the people, whether Israelis, Palestinians, or our supporters. And I think, the call for equality is you find lots of people to listen to it, unless you are really racist or supremacist, on the side of the Israelis. So, I think Miko had it right, and I think
I have great respect for Miko.
I believe, his message is far-reaching with lots of people, and hopefully we'll interview him soon on this program. But I think, it's important to be principled with our listeners and our people and people who are supporting us. Yes, you mentioned Yuri Avneri. He had an article on March 2nd. You know, he sends it weekly thing, but he talking about the Intifada, the third Intifada. He said one thing is certain, and I'm quoting now, Afif. One thing is certain, Mahmoud Abbas Arafat here is very much afraid of it, of the Intifada. He waited for a few days, and then once he was sure that this was not a general uprising, he ordered his American-trained police forces to intervene and put an end to the demonstrations. So, what do you think of that? I mean, we have these Dayton boys, and I'm sure there is no girls with them, are really enforcing the security of Israel. He stated in many occasions that this is his objective, General Dayton, is to secure Israel. And at the same time, when it comes to protecting our Palestinian people, these Dayton babies or boys are not really there. You don't find them. The sixth Palestinian was killed just yesterday. He died from injuries on the February 22nd. This year in the West Bank. You know, I mean, how far the Palestinian Authority want to keep going on with, and the name is absurd. The name is absurd, really.
Yeah, let me tell you.
I think an authority. It's not an authority.
I believe that the discussion about a third Intifada has not been engaged in a serious manner so far. It's much more discussed, by the way, in Israeli media and in Israeli circles, and some Israeli authoritative voices would wish a violent action in Palestinian territories so that they can be relieved of the diplomatic pressures that are exerted on them. I believe on our side, what we are trying to do is to escalate our popular nonviolent struggle. And we are having some success stories which go beyond Bil'in, Na'lin, Nabi Musa, etc. As you know, Hannah, recently there were the attempts to create the new villages of tents in areas that were on the verge of being again confiscated, etc. And the Israelis continuously dismantle them, and we go again to establish them. In November, the youth movement in the West Bank engaged in a nationwide struggle to disrupt the communications of Israel for the settlements on Palestinian territory, those apartheid highways that are exclusively for Israeli usage and Jewish usage, etc. So I believe the strategy on the Palestinian side is how to enhance and escalate this popular nonviolent struggle. Why do people not yet consider it as the third Intifada? Should Intifadas be only military? I personally believe we should engage in a serious discussion within Palestinian society, and I believe the discussion has been taking place on whether we have an interest to resort to armed struggle or not.
No, but
I, for one...
We're not talking really, Afif, about armed struggle. We're talking about throwing stones.
and not necessarily throwing stones, because a sit-in on all the lines of communication, the road system, without throwing any stones might be much more efficient than throwing a few stones that attain nobody, but which drew massive Israeli retaliation, which kills Palestinians. So I believe our society is becoming increasingly imaginative in devising mechanisms. I invite you and I and others to contribute in the refinement of that strategy and how to make it better known abroad, because unfortunately, for example, journalists who are there accredited in the area, up to now they don't think that unviolent struggles are sexy enough to deserve media coverage. They like blood to flow on whatever side. We should demand that they have a more accurate coverage of the struggles that are waged, and I believe the struggle is there on a daily basis.
Yeah, I'd like to move to the Canadian position. Really, I'm sure
Yes, please.
you've been asked about John Baird yesterday on the CBC interview.
Yeah, I was the guest of the program Power and Politics.
Yeah, Power and Politics.
And I was asked on the issue.
Yeah.
And believe you me, with great reluctance, I had to comment on the issue because I'm surprised at the Canadian position. And I'm surprised that a Canadian foreign minister goes to the UN General Assembly to take the floor after the Palestinian president on behalf of Canada to deny us our right to statehood and our aspiration for ending the occupation. I was surprised to see the foreign minister of Canada go to Washington to deliver a speech to AIPAC, which I thought was a very powerful lobby that grew accustomed to using one muscle too many, going one pressure too far. But in the American system, I didn't know that it was also a lobby that operated on Canadian territory and had to be massaged every now and then. And the position adopted by Canada, I have difficulties to understand. For example, saying that they are worried that we might go to the International Criminal Court, while I haven't heard worry expressed at the constant daily Israeli practices that violate the international will and the international law, being more worried that we might go to the UN rather than being worried by the Israeli violations on the ground against human beings, against a totality of a collectivity, an entire people. I am surprised at so much insensitivity towards Palestinian pain and suffering. And yet I'm surprised that there isn't a voice, responsible voice, a constructive voice from within Canada that is raising itself, saying it's unfair, our position is unbalanced, and our position is indefendable. And we are all responsible. You, maybe Hannah more than I, but in Canada, I would hope to hear the voices to challenge that unilateral, one-sided alignment on the Israeli misbehavior.
Yeah, actually, you know, the headline at the national, I call it pest, not post, was "You'll face consequences." That was the headline of the article. If you take Israel to ICC. That was the headline. You know, I mean, Mr. Solomon didn't think this is blackmail. If it's not blackmail, what it is, you know? I mean, he's threatening you. And, you know, I want to ask you, what does Canada contribute financially? And, you know, the other question, Harper threatened to cut aid to the Palestinian Authority when Palestine was introduced.
Let me tell you, Hannah, very frank.
Do that. I'd like to know what, I mean, our information is that all the money goes to training the security, the Dayton people, the Teton, what I call them.
Hannah, I know for a fact that... just a moment.
Kind of money? Yeah, I want to ask you what kind of money.
I'm not a specialist on Canadian-Palestinian relations, so I don't know of what volume of aid we are talking about. And I know for a fact that there are negotiations during the last few months on how to use Canadian assistance towards education and medication. And I would favor those two areas of support. And let me tell you,
they cut the funding.
Hannah, let me continue.
But I want to tell you,
Hannah, let me continue.
Just a small point of view that they cut the funding to the UNRWA, if you know that. Canada. So, I mean, you continue with your thought because...
No, what I wanted to say is that as a recipient of donor assistance, we are grateful for that assistance, whatever its volume. But let me tell you, my opinion has been for many, many years that many countries, because of the absence of political courage and audacity to pressure the Israelis politically, they were generous in their financial aid to our society so that our society would not collapse totally. And in a way, the financial assistance was there as a compensation for the absence of the political pressure. I, for one, prefer the political pressure to remove that occupation, to remove the Israelis off our back, and then we might not need that financial assistance.
No, we won't.
But Canada today is threatening, one, in its political attitudes vis-à-vis our approach, but also is threatening to withhold the financial assistance, including to UNRWA. I leave it to Canadian society to say its say on the topic. I am a foreigner. I'm just passing through. But I'm surprised at how in official circles in Canada, our cry for freedom out of captivity and bondage is not being sufficiently heard, and that there is no discomfort of embarrassment in certain circles to defend and align themselves on those in Israel that are perceived around the world, including in Jewish circles, as obstinate oppressors who don't want a solution.
Yeah, I think, I want to go also to other subject, which I'm sure is dear to your heart, the murder of Arafat. Why the authorities still sitting on their hand and not...
My friend, I am a Arafatist in the noble sense of the word, in the Gaullist sense of the word. Arafat was a leader of Palestine that has put us back on the map, etc. To tell you frankly, I wouldn't use any type of argument on this discussion because I don't think we will have any new element. Arafat died in very suspicious conditions. The general belief is that he was assassinated in a very sophisticated manner by the Israelis. I personally believe it's going to be very difficult forensically to prove whatever. And I am not in favor of exploiting the death of the father of the nation in Palestinian polemics, etc.
I agree with you totally, but we want the truth, really.
Of course we want the truth.
And Yuri Dan, the confidant of Sharon, he wrote a book in 2006, and he said, the book is called Ariel Sharon. I believe in French, and I don't read French, but you do. It's called Ariel Sharon, Intimate Portrait. That's the name of the book. And in it he said that Sharon poisoned Arafat after he got the agreement of Bush in the early 2004. So why not? I mean, this guy is a confidant of Sharon. Why people don't, take him seriously? Although he died mysteriously the same year also, which is not really out of the realm for the Mossad.
I believe, Hannah, the best way of remembering Yasser Arafat today, we Palestinians, is by endeavoring and investing every possible energy today in repairing the Palestinian political system, achieving Palestinian reconciliation, reunifying the West Bank and the Gaza Strip, and of improving our network of relations between Palestinians of the inside with our diaspora communities around the world.
I agree.
That's the best way of showing respect and affection to a person who devoted all his life and gave his death for the cause.
And
he committed mistakes because he was not infallible, and nobody is infallible.
Nobody says he didn't, but he was the figure and the father, like you said, and he was murdered for it.
Hannah, you know that I have a fascinating commitment in half an hour. I'm supposed to be taken to the Palestine house, and I'm so happy.
I'm going to wrap it up, really, but I want to really give you credit for all the work you did, and you talked about our role, and our role also to really attack and defeat corruption from our within. But before you go, I want to really commend you, and I think you did a great job during the 2.5 years you were in the United States, and I can't understand why they get rid of you from there. You don't have to answer. And also, why did they get rid of you when you were the ambassador to Russia, which you did the great job?
Well, my friend, let me tell you, thank you for the feelings you have expressed. I want to assure you that I don't have bitterness, because I believe that bitterness is a very lousy advisor in political activity. On the contrary, I always try to be optimistic and constructive, and I don't have any bitterness. But
I know.
I had some unfortunate moments in domestic politics. You often have that. But let me tell you that months after the Moscow episode, there was the Fateh conference, which took place, by the way, in Bethlehem.
Congratulations,
And there I was asked to run for elections for the Fateh parliament, and out of 700 candidates, I came number 22, which my friends told me was a sign of appreciation for the role that with great humility and modesty I played.
Yeah, and you
Hannah,
were elected to the Revolutionary Council of Fatah,
which is the Parliament of Fatah.
Yeah.
Hannah, it has been a pleasure talking to you, my friend.
And really,
I wish you success in your endeavors with this radio program.
Yeah.
And I hope that we can cooperate in the future. And I have respect for your positions, even when we disagree.
Oh, for sure.
It was said about us Arabs that Arabs have agreed to disagree, and I always used to respond, no.
Yeah.
We Arabs, we have to learn how to disagree. And I think with you, one can have a very respectable, respectful relationship. And really, I bow in respect for your commitment over several decades for the cause of your people. You have been serving your people with great dignity, Hannah, and I wish you success.
And the same here. We really respect all the work you did, and we know you doing it not for personal gains or for any sectarian issues. You're doing it for our greater cause, for the Palestinian people, and we respect you for that. Thank you, Afif.
Hannah, wish you the best, sir. Bye-bye, my friend.
And that was Hannah Kawas speaking with Palestinian diplomat and author Afif Safieh. And with that, we conclude another edition of The Voice of Palestine. I've been your co-host, Marian Kawas, and our closing piece of music is by the late, great Egyptian singer Sheikh Imam, based on a poem by Palestinian poet Tawfiq Ziad, I Clasp Your Hands. We dedicate this song to the steadfast resistance of the Palestinian people who will continue to fight for their homeland until victory.
بوجه ظلام يتيما عاريا حافيا